Hey everybody, today we're looking at the so-called conversion of Saul. Meanwhile, Saul was spewing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. During the journey, as he approached Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven encircled him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice asking him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" Saul asked, "Who are you, Lord?" "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting," came the reply. For 3 days he was blind and neither ate nor drank anything. The Lord said, "This man is the instrument I have chosen to carry my name before Gentiles, kings, and Israelites. I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." So what really changes for Saul on the road to Damascus? Right? I call this the conversion of Saul. A lot of our Bibles will have that as the heading. Or we'll say this is where he becomes a Christian, or he becomes a real believer. Well, the reason that's a little complicated is Saul has always been a devout follower of God. And he does completely understand his understanding of Jesus here as someone to work against and seeing him now as the true Lord and Messiah and Christ. But, Saul has always served God passionately. And so I think what radically changes here through Christ is his understanding of what that passion for God should look like. Before this, Saul had a kind of faith that was expressed in sometimes a willingness to do violence, to inflict suffering for the sake of God. Now that seems crazy, but actually we see this all the time, right? Maybe it's just harsh, judgmental words, but you probably met some believers who were pretty terrible people, but they excuse that behavior because, well, it's for God. This is so serious. This is what I got to do. We got to punish the wrongdoers or those who don't believe rightly. And so what Christ begins to show him here, and what Saul eventually understands more fully, is that true faith, the true way of God, is a willingness to suffer for others. Now, that last statement from Jesus, I'm going to show him how much he has to suffer. I don't think that's meant to sound like a threat or revenge. It's really the reality of what it means to really be in tune with the God who is constantly pouring himself out, as we see in Christ. And so Saul is radically changed, and yet he's still himself. We'll get to when he changes his name Paul, but that's actually years later. What God is changing here, it's taking who Saul is and redirecting that passion in a more productive direction. So, can you experience that kind of conversion? Conversion is not actually just a one-time event like we sometimes talk about it. It's a daily commitment to more and more growing as a disciple of the suffering and self-giving Christ.